At Grayson Prep, the motto above every classroom door read, "Excellence above all." It was the kind of elite private school where students arrived in sleek black SUVs, where lunch was catered by chefs, and where parents donated buildings to ensure their child's seat. No one paid much attention to Isla. She was the scholarship girl. The daughter of a widowed seamstress, she walked to school in hand-me-down shoes and sat quietly in the back of class, her mousy brown hair always tied in a loose braid. She barely spoke unless called upon, and when she did, her voice was so soft the teacher would have to lean in to catch it. Mr. Donovan, the literature teacher, wasn't unkind, but he was particular. He liked students with polish, strong voices, sharp arguments, kids who read Shakespeare with fire. He gave Isla a D on her first essay. "You need to be bolder," he said, tapping the paper. "This is just passive." "Safe." She nodded quietly. But her eyes, if he had really looked, held something deeper. 1 week later, the students were assigned a midterm project: write a fictional short story inspired by real-world injustice. Mr. Donovan reminded the class. "Be creative. Be fearless." The room buzzed with excitement. Some planned tales about courtroom drama, others about fallen tech moguls. Isla turned in her story early. Mr. Donovan barely skimmed it. Her formatting was odd, her grammar too proper. The cover page was plain. He shook his head. C+, he scribbled without a second thought. 2 days later, the school erupted with whispers. "Did you see it? She's on TV. CNN, bro." Mr. Donovan glanced up from his desk as a group of students crowded around a phone. Isla's name was on their lips. He walked over. "What's going on?" One student turned the phone to him. The screen showed a national news anchor. "Our next story comes from a high school student whose fictional piece has gone viral for its haunting parallels to a real unsolved crime. Meet Isla Nunez, the quiet teen whose words are shaking the country." Mr. Donovan's heart skipped. The footage cut to Isla, her braid tidied, her soft voice steady, as she sat across from the anchor. "I wrote about a girl who disappeared after working late at a restaurant, and how no one believed her family because they were undocumented." The screen shifted to side-by-side comparisons, Isla's story, and a real-life missing persons case from 3 years ago in a nearby city. Isla hadn't known it was real, but her fictional tale mirrored the details with eerie accuracy. The street name, the red apron, the nickname, Star. "It was in my dreams," Isla said in the interview. "I thought I made it up." Detectives were now reopening the cold case because of her story. Mr. Donovan stared in silence. By the end of the week, Isla's story had been published in the Atlantic. Universities were reaching out. A producer wanted to option the story for a streaming series. She hadn't changed, but everyone else had. The same students who snickered at her patched sweater now begged for writing tips. The headmaster proudly claimed her as one of Grayson's finest. Mr. Donovan tried to act unfazed, but something gnawed at him. He pulled her original essay from his drawer and actually read it for the first time. And there it was. Brilliant, haunting, vivid. He had failed her, not because her work was weak, but because he hadn't seen her. He asked her to stay after class the next day. "Isla," he began, gently placing the paper on her desk. "I owe you an apology. I didn't give your work the attention it deserved." She looked at him, a flicker of hurt passing behind her eyes. "It's okay." "No," he said, voice firm. "It's not." She hesitated. "You said my writing was passive. But I was trying not to be loud about something painful. I was trying to whisper the truth, and hope someone would lean in." He swallowed. And that was when it hit him. She hadn't been too quiet. He'd just been too loud to hear. The story continued to grow. More clues emerged from Isla's tale. One line even led to a tip from a former restaurant employee who had been too afraid to speak until now. Authorities confirmed. Her fictional story had directly helped investigators make a break in the cold case. And then came the call that stunned everyone. Isla had been invited to speak at the National Writers' Summit in Washington, D.C. She would be on stage with Pulitzer winners. The humble girl who barely spoke in class was now the voice of a nation. On the day of her departure, the school held an impromptu assembly. The headmaster gushed. Teachers clapped. Even Mr. Donovan offered her a signed copy of his favorite book, To Kill a Mockingbird. "Thank you," she said quietly, "but I'd rather bring this." She held up her tattered notebook, the same one she'd written in since middle school. As she left the auditorium, reporters and cameras flanked her. She remained humble, composed, but a little overwhelmed. Mr. Donovan watched from the doorway, an ache in his chest, not of jealousy, but of realization. He had failed to recognize a genius hidden in plain sight. That night, he sat alone in his apartment, watching the news again. Isla stood at the summit podium, nervously clearing her throat. "I was told once that my writing was too soft. But sometimes it's the quiet ones who carry the loudest truths. Not everyone has the luxury of shouting. Some of us write instead." The crowd erupted in applause. But just as the broadcast faded, breaking news interrupted. "Authorities in North Carolina say a mysterious journal found in Isla Núñez's childhood home may be connected to another cold case dating back over a decade. Details remain unconfirmed, but sources say the journal contains stories that match circumstances eerily close to unsolved crimes." Mr. Donovan leaned forward. Was this high school writer unknowingly documenting real tragedies? Or is something else going on? The rain hit the streets of Willow Hollow like a whisper, soft, steady, insistent. The same way Isla Núñez had always moved through life. But now, everything was louder. Ever since the journal was discovered in a box of childhood drawings under her bed, the world had been buzzing with questions. More stories. More strange coincidences. Another case in North Carolina. One in New Mexico. Her fictional tales, written in innocence and imagination, seemed to line up too perfectly with real crimes. The public was captivated. But Isla? She was terrified. The morning after her national speech, Isla sat across from an FBI agent at her family's small kitchen table. Her mother clutched a rosary in the next room, whispering prayers in Spanish. The agent spoke softly but seriously. "Isla, we believe you may have been exposed to events when you were very young, things your brain may have buried. These stories, they're not made up, not entirely. Some of them match sealed case files." She swallowed hard. "So you think I witnessed something?" "We think your mind remembered for you." Meanwhile, back at Grayson Prep, Mr. Donovan couldn't shake the feeling in his gut. He reread her stories, the old essays, the early scribbles she'd left in her notebook. There was something eerie in the details. A line about a woman in red shoes with a limp. Another about a broken stop sign near a diner. A dog that barked every night at exactly 2:14 a.m. They weren't random. And suddenly, a memory came rushing back. A field trip, years ago, when Isla was just 10. The bus broke down outside a tiny town, and the children had to wait at a nearby gas station for hours. Mr. Donovan had chaperoned. That town was the same one in Isla's latest story. She had been there. The next week, Isla's mother revealed something startling. Isla had been prone to vivid night terrors as a child. She would wake screaming about the man in the green hat, about the lady in the freezer. Her mother had chalked it up to stress trauma from her father's sudden death. But now, the FBI was re-examining everything. They brought in a specialist in recovered memories. A therapist who worked with children exposed to traumatic events they couldn't consciously remember. Isla agreed to try. Under careful guidance, her mind slowly began to release fragments. Not all at once, but in flashes. The smell of oil on leather. A flickering light bulb. A red scarf caught in a fence. A scream. And then, one night, in the quiet of her room, she remembered a name. Maribel. She had whispered it in her sleep before, but this time she woke herself up. The name matched a missing persons report from 2009. Maribel Ortega. Last seen at a rest stop halfway between New York and Virginia. Her case had gone cold a decade ago. Until Isla mentioned a scene in her story. The girl with the birthmark shaped like a star who never got back in the car. Maribel had a birthmark. A star. On her right shoulder. The case exploded. Isla was no longer just a viral sensation. She had become the link between forgotten lives and justice. And yet it took a toll. The fame, the pressure, the fear that she was just a puppet of pain she didn't choose to carry. She returned to Grayson Prep only once, quietly, to clean out her locker. She expected the usual silence, but instead, the halls erupted in cheers. Students who once ignored her now lined up just to say, "Thank you." Teachers who once passed her by now called her brilliant. But Isla didn't smile. Not really. Because somewhere deep inside her, something still didn't make sense. That night, she returned to the journal. One story stood out, one she didn't remember writing. It was written in a different kind of ink. The penmanship slightly different. She flipped to the back cover and saw it. Para Isa Conamore. Papa. Her father. But he died when she was 5. Or so she had been told. The next morning, Isla confronted her mother. "Mama, is Dad really dead?" Silence. Then tears. Then truth. Her father had disappeared after getting involved in a local protest about unsafe labor conditions at a textile plant. He had been warned. Threatened. And then, gone. The police called it a robbery gone wrong. But her mother had never believed it. She had kept the truth from Isla to protect her. To give her a chance to live without the weight of vengeance. But the stories were her father's. He had written them, too. Some had bled into Isla's dreams. Some he had read to her when she was barely old enough to speak. He had been collecting details. Clues. Names. He had been fighting injustice with stories. And now, so was she. The final twist came days later. A call from a private investigator, someone Isla had never hired. They had been tracking patterns in the disappearances from her stories, following roads, journals, and names. And they had found something. A cabin. In the woods of West Virginia. In the basement, dozens of journals. And a list. A list of names, dates, coordinates. Half of them had check marks beside them. The other half didn't. One of the names? Isla Nunez.